Hey, what's up guys? Little man with a big opinion here. And in today's video on the drive to work, we are going to talk about the risk factors involved in living in a city or an urban environment. And what I mean by that is denser population, more factors involved because you have more people that, generally speaking, humans want to survive. That's, within our nature. So, those of us that are preppers, that do prepare, we are, attempting to get ready. That way, we are not having to venture out, find our food, find our water, protect ourselves. We're not having to gather the stuff to keep us going, when crap is hitting the fan. I think as a prepper, you're trying to do your best to either keep things afloat up until stuff goes back to normal, or if things don't ever go back to normal, give yourself the best chance of survival. The more people involved, the quicker resources go away, the more, mobs, factions, organizations that pop up that, this is the first issue. The analogy that I'm going to use, or the historical fact, was about 1/3 of the colonists in America wanted to revolt from Great Britain. 1/3 were like, no, I think we should stay with Great Britain. And the other third was, hey, I'm living my life, things are going great. I don't care if we're our own country or, if Britain's in charge of us. Either way, I'm already taking care of myself. It's whatever. So the same can be said, in a grid down situation. U.S. government's not coming back. Our way of life, has changed. Some people are going to be like, look, I'm taking care of myself and my family. I don't care what you do until you mess with my system. Some people are going to be like, that system's gone. We're putting in a new one. We think this one's better. Here are our rules. You got to follow it. And then there will be some people that are like, we liked the way it was, so we're going to do our best to, maintain and keep going with that sort of situation. So when you live in big, crowded cities, I would think you typically tend to be of, the latter two categories. You either want to try to maintain your system because that's, in a major city, the subway system going down can throw a massive wrench in your entire day. Or, you want to get on top, be in charge the fastest. I did not know they had ponies. I knew these people had horses, but I didn't know they had ponies. But things are definitely going to change. And you've also heard me say, you have at best 72 hours before the shelves run dry. The more populated, dense you are, the more trucks actually come into your area to make your shelves look full all the time. So I really think you're going to run out of supplies much quicker than that 72 hours, versus being in a more rural environment. And I guess the other thing I need to throw out there is what I consider urban or city living. It can really be up for debate because I live in a city. It's about 6,000 people. For our conversation today, I believe, between 50 and 100,000 is the low end of what, qualifies for our discussion today. So, that being said, I don't know the exact number of U.S. cities that are 100,000 people or higher, but I know there's a bunch. And the more, I would say once you get to the 500,000 and higher, your issues just become substantially worse. Just because the sheer number of people. So, the next thing you have to look out for is, are you bugging out or bugging in? I believe if you live in a city of 50,000 people or higher, your goal should be to bug out. Now, you have to determine your risk factor of when you're going to bug out, where you're going to bug out to. If you don't know where you're going to bug out to and you don't have a place, I'll put a link in the description down below when I talked about, bugging out to state and national parks and places like that. So check that video out down below. But, I believe shelves will run out within 72 hours. Most people will stick around in that environment for upwards of 2 weeks. So your goal should be to either get out of Dodge before things completely implode on itself, or prepare to wait out, bugging in for about 2 weeks. People dissipate looking for other, resources to consume. And when the population is lower, that is your best chance to, GTFO. Then, I believe wholeheartedly that in every situation, it should be your goal to get out of the city. They're made of concrete and metal, and there's not very many places that you can, become self-sufficient within a city. You're talking about, grazing land for animals, land to be able to grow fruits and vegetables. It is not the ideal place. So your prepping goal shouldn't be to, stick it out in a city, because I don't see very many cases in which that is feasible. Really, what you need to be looking for is, a place that you can already be established, so you don't have to worry about, establishing yourself after the grid goes down. But other things to keep in mind, within cities is, critical infrastructure that is in place now, even without electricity, it's going to cause, major issues. Most of your water in these big cities is probably pumped in from somewhere. So water storage is super important. And again, you're inside of a city, space for storing your resources is very limited. Like I said, most of your supplies are brought in, by trucks and trains. So the biggest things working against you outside of your immense population, where every single person ultimately has their own goal, their own survival. With society running, people already do terrible things. If we lose power, in a lot of senses, we just go straight back to the 1800s. And a big portion of their life was just, obtaining the resources they need to eat. It wasn't until the advances within technology and stuff that, we started making machines that could do work that other people had to do. A lot of the money that you made, was consumed in that same year for your basic necessities. And that's how I think most people will, revert back to. Outside of the people, if you've got that situation handled, whether, you've got a strong enough, I call my home, my castle, my fortress. If you don't have to worry about people, they've moved on, then you have to worry about water. Most of the cities are pumping water in, which means, unless you can get that infrastructure running again, you need to establish a rain catchment system. You need to attempt to dig a well. But these are all things that you're doing after the grid's gone down and you have the space to do it in. Because space is a massive limiting factor. I don't remember, he's not really a prepper, he's just like a homesteader. And he lives out in Arizona where they get very little rainfall. And basically every roof surface he has collects into, it was either 2 or 3 1,500-gallon tanks. And he had to have those big of tanks because he couldn't spare to lose any of the water that he was collecting. And, the roof of his house, his shed, his chicken coop, his garage, everything collected. His solar panels, he put gutters along the edge of his solar panels because he needed every absolute drop of water. If you're living in a big city, even if, for one, you probably are renting, or leasing something. So you probably don't have, it's not within your agreement to add that to the property. So let's say you do have a house. Depending on the rainfall of where you live, you're going to need a lot of water storage. I did the math for where I live. On average, it rains every 4 days out of the year. So we've got, a decent amount of rainfall. And if I find the calculator before I upload this video, I'll put it in there. But there's a calculator that determines your roof space, its square footage, the amount of rain you get per year, and the amount of storage you need to only live off of that. And that's not counting for, droughts or super wet seasons or anything. But for where I live, we needed to have about 800 gallons of stored water. That guy previously mentioned, he needed 4,500 gallons of water storage. So that's something to take into consideration. An 800-gallon water storage where I'm at is possible if I buried it underground. Then I'd have to put a hand pump, for my SHTF situation, or, it needs an electrical pump. But is where you're living capable of storing that much water? Because the end goal for all preppers should be self-sustainability. If you can take care of yourself, works out great. If you get resources from, other bits of the government, as they are still functioning or not functioning, if it works out, it works out. But storage is a super difficult thing to achieve within a city. And then just other things to keep in mind. It was the I-95 winter storm, car crashes, people were stuck in their cars for hours and hours on end. most people are going to probably try to leave that situation. Many of the avenues coming in and out are probably going to be blocked off by abandoned cars, by people bringing stuff that they ended up, dropping off to save weight. And it'll just be a massive, graveyard. Sewage will back up, without the, critical personnel, firefighters, a fire could devastate the entire city, and without, the professionals there, with their equipment and things functioning, that could be a major issue versus living in a smaller community. Everyday problems get bigger in bigger cities. In smaller communities, there's a good possibility that you could still handle that situation yourself. But with that, that's what I got for you. In the comment section down below, let me know other issues you're going to face within the cities, outside of massive populations that, their end goal is their own survival. When infrastructure fails, everyday problems get expanded upon in big cities. And then, lastly, just the storage and, in most cases, not being able to set up the self-sustainability until the grid collapses to that point where you can spread out, put water storage here, put animals here, put a garden here. Space is very limited in those situations. But that being said, like the video if you like the content, subscribe if you like what I'm doing with my channel, and share the video with a friend or family member if they'd benefit from our discussion today. And with that, catch you in the next one.